Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
This happened back when I was in 8th grade, and I still get angry thinking about it. I had this friend in my class. We weren't super close, but we hung out sometimes and sat near each other. He got in trouble a lot. Nothing serious, just the usual stuff like talking during class, forgetting homework, being late. Teachers always had their eyes on him because of his reputation. About a week before what I'm about to tell you, something terrible happened. His mother passed away. I can't even imagine what that must have been like for him. One day, your mom is there, and the next day, she's just gone forever. The whole school knew about it. Students were talking about it in hushed voices in the hallways, and I thought the teachers all knew too. I mean, how could they not? When he came back to school, which was way sooner than I expected, he was obviously not himself. I wouldn't have blamed him if he'd stayed home for weeks, but there he was, sitting at his desk. Maybe being at home was too hard, or maybe his dad thought routine would help. I don't know. But what I do know is that he was clearly struggling. The day it happened started like any other day. We had our usual classes in the morning, and he was quiet but managing. Then we got to 5th period, which was with our most strict teacher. She was the type who didn't tolerate any nonsense and ruled her classroom with an iron fist. She had her favorites and her targets, and my friend had definitely been on her target list since the beginning of the year. When class started, my friend just put his head down on his desk. He didn't take out his notebook, didn't grab a pen, didn't do anything. He just laid there with his head on his arms. I looked over at him a few times, feeling really bad. The rest of us were taking notes while our teacher was going over some lesson, but he didn't move. For the first 20 minutes or so, our teacher didn't say anything. I thought maybe she was going to let it slide this one time, but then I guess it started bothering her too much. Our teacher told him to sit up and pay attention, reminding him that this wasn't nap time. My friend didn't respond. He didn't even lift his head. The classroom got a little tense because everyone could sense something was about to happen. She repeated herself, this time more forcefully, telling him that she was talking to him and demanding that he sit up right now. Still nothing. He just stayed there, head down, not moving. Our teacher's face started getting red, which was never a good sign. She gave him an ultimatum, saying that if he didn't sit up and participate in her class, she would send him to the principal's office. She asked if he understood her. A few more seconds passed. My friend still didn't move or say anything. I could see some of my classmates exchanging nervous looks. We all knew about his mom, and we all thought our teacher must know too. Why else would she push this? Our teacher said that she'd had enough. She said his attitude and behavior had been going on all year and she was done with it. She walked closer to his desk and her voice got even sharper. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. She asked him what his mother would say about all this and said that she was going to call her that very day to tell her everything about how he was acting. The entire classroom went completely silent. I mean, dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Everyone froze. I felt my stomach drop because I couldn't believe what I just heard. Did she really not know? How is that possible? My friend slowly lifted his head and stood up. His face was blank, just completely emotionless. He looked directly at our teacher and told her in this calm, flat voice that she should have good luck trying to reach his mother. Then he just walked out of the classroom. He didn't slam the door or yell or anything dramatic. He just left. Our teacher stood there looking confused for a second, and then one of the students in the front row spoke up. The student explained that his mom had died last week and that the funeral was 5 days ago. I watched our teacher's face change from confusion to shock to absolute horror in about 3 seconds. All the color drained from her face. She stammered something about not knowing, about nobody telling her. Another student chimed in, saying that everyone knew because it had been all over school. Our teacher looked like she might cry or throw up or both. She tried to continue the lesson but kept stumbling over her words. She dismissed us 10 minutes early, which she never did. The rest of the day was awkward, and everyone was talking about what happened. Later that day, I heard from someone who was in the office that our teacher went to find my friend to apologize. She felt terrible and kept saying she had no idea, that nobody told her, that she would never have said something like that if she'd known. My friend accepted her apology, but I know he was really hurt by it. The thing that gets me is that this was a small school. Everyone knew, students knew, other teachers knew, the principal definitely knew. How did she not get a memo or an email or something? Don't schools have procedures for this kind of thing? You'd think when a student loses a parent, all their teachers would be told so they could be more understanding and supportive. My friend ended up being fine eventually. He graduated with us and moved on with his life. I'm 28 years old now, married with 2 kids, a 7-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter. My husband is 30 and we've built what I think is a pretty good life together. We both work, we share responsibilities at home, and we're trying our best to raise our kids to be decent human beings who can take care of themselves. That last part is really important to me because of how I grew up. My mother, to her credit, is a wonderful grandmother in a lot of ways. She loves my kids fiercely and she's always been willing to help out when we need her. She'll babysit without complaint. She remembers birthdays, she shows up to school events, but there's this one thing about her that's always driven me insane. And it's gotten worse since she's been staying with us this past week. Let me back up a bit. Growing up, I had 2 younger brothers. From the time I was old enough to reach the kitchen counter, I was expected to help around the house. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Kids should learn responsibility. But the problem was that my brothers were never held to the same standard. While I was doing dishes, laundry, cooking meals, and cleaning bathrooms, my brothers would be playing video games or watching television. If I ever complained or asked them to help, my mother would call me lazy. Lazy? Me, the one doing everything while they did nothing. My youngest brother, and I'm not exaggerating here, had to be spoon-fed until he was 10 years old. 10, because he refused to eat otherwise and my mother just went along with it. Both of my brothers moved out of our parents' house in their late 20s, not knowing how to do basic things like wash their own clothes or cook a simple meal. It was embarrassing and infuriating to watch. So when my husband and I had kids, I promised myself things would be different. Both our kids do age-appropriate chores. My son sometimes does the dishes after dinner. Nothing crazy, just a few plates and cups and some utensils. My daughter helps set the table and clean it up afterwards. They make their beds, they put away their toys, they help fold laundry sometimes. They're learning to be responsible and independent, and they don't even complain about it because it's just always been part of our routine. About a week ago, my mother came to visit. Everything was fine at first, but then I started noticing something that made my blood boil. When she saw my son doing his chores, she'd swoop in and do them for him. She'd take the dish soap out of his hands and tell him to go play. She'd make his bed for him. She'd put away his toys. But when my daughter was doing her chores, my mother wouldn't say a word. She'd just watch or walk past like it was completely normal. At first, I thought maybe she just didn't want to see her grandchildren doing any work at all. She's called me a cold mother more than once for having them do chores, but then the pattern became crystal clear. She was only stopping my son. Only him. And suddenly I was 12 years old again, scrubbing toilets while my brothers played outside. I started correcting her. I'd tell my son to finish what he was doing. I'd physically step between them so she couldn't take over. This made her visibly agitated, but I didn't care. This was my house and these were my kids. Yesterday evening was when everything came to a head. We just finished dinner, and it was my son's turn to do the dishes. My daughter and my husband were clearing the table like usual. My mother immediately tried to stop my son from going to the sink. She called him sweetie and told him he didn't need to do the dishes. She said he should go play and that she'd handle it instead. I immediately shut that down and told her no, that it was his turn and he needed to finish his chores. She protested, saying he was just a baby and that I was being too harsh. I told her that he was 7 years old and perfectly capable of doing what was expected of him. Then I suggested we talk outside. I practically dragged her out to the backyard. I could feel my husband's eyes on us, probably worried about what was about to happen. Once we were outside, she started in on me immediately. She said she didn't understand why I was so cold to my son, She asked why I couldn't just do the dishes myself instead of making him do it. I explained that we split chores evenly in our house and that everyone contributes. I pointed out that he was only washing 5 plates and some spoons, nothing excessive. She wasn't having it. She told me I was working him like a servant and that it wasn't right. Then she called me lazy and said, I just wanted my child to do my work for me. That word, lazy, the same word she'd thrown at me my entire childhood while I did everything and my brothers did nothing. I snapped. I asked her how she could possibly call me lazy after she'd made me clean up after everybody my entire life while my brothers never lifted a finger. She tried to defend herself by saying she did what she thought was best at the time. I wasn't done though. I told her that what she thought was best clearly wasn't, because I wasn't going to enable my son to become a pathetic loser like her sons turned out to be. I reminded her about how she had to spoon feed my little brother until he was 10 years old because she let him get away with everything. She asked how I dared speak about my brothers that way. I doubled down and told her that my brothers were incompetent because of her. I said I was teaching my son to be independent and capable, and that while she may have raised 2 boys, she wasn't my kid's mother. I told her she needed to back off when I was parenting my own children, and to stop trying to turn my son into another incompetent jerk who couldn't function without a woman doing everything for him. She just stared at me for a moment, her eyes filling with tears. Then she turned and went inside without another word. Within an hour, she'd packed her bags and left. She didn't even say goodbye to the kids. Later that evening, my dad called. He didn't yell, but his voice was tight and disappointed. He told me that my mother was devastated and had been crying all afternoon. He asked if I didn't think I'd been too harsh with her. I asked him if I was harsh. Then I answered my own question and said maybe I was, but that I wasn't wrong. He insisted that she loved those kids. I acknowledged that I knew she did, but I said she needed to respect how we were raising them. I told him I wasn't going to apologize for teaching my son basic life skills, or for refusing to repeat the same mistakes she made with us. He let out a long sigh and hung up. My husband came and sat next to me on the couch. He asked if I was okay. I admitted I didn't know and asked him if he thought I'd gone too far. He was quiet for a moment before telling me that, honestly, he didn't think so. He said he'd watched my mother treat me like garbage compared to my brothers for years, and that she needed to hear what I said. He acknowledged that maybe I didn't need to use those exact words, but that someone needed to say it. I said she was probably going to hold this against me forever. He shrugged and said maybe she would, but what mattered was that our son wasn't going to grow up thinking women existed to serve him. I nodded, but I still felt uneasy about the whole thing. This morning, my son asked why his grandmother left without saying goodbye. I didn't know what to tell him, so I just said she had to go home earlier than planned. He seemed to accept that explanation and went back to playing with his sister. I'm still not sure if I handled everything the right way, but I do know this. I will not let my mother sabotage what we're trying to teach our children. I won't let her recreate the same dynamic that messed me up for years. If that makes me the villain in her story, then so be it. I've spent too much of my life being the good daughter who kept quiet while being treated like a servant. I'm not going to watch history repeat itself with my own son. My mother hasn't called or texted since she left. My dad sent one more message saying I should apologize, but I haven't responded. My husband has been supportive, which helps, but I still feel this nagging guilt in the back of my mind. Part of me wonders if I could have said things differently, been less harsh, found a gentler way to make my point. But then I think about my brothers. One of them is 32 and still brings his laundry to our parents' house because he never learned how to use a washing machine. The other one recently got dumped by his girlfriend because she got tired of being his maid. They're both nice guys in their own way, but they're completely unprepared for adult life because my mother coddled them and excused them from every responsibility. I refuse to do that to my son. I refuse to raise him thinking that housework is beneath him or that it's someone else's job to take care of him. He's going to know how to cook, clean, do laundry, and take care of himself. And if my mother can't accept that, then maybe it's better she keeps her distance for a while. My brother and I were heading to our cousin's wedding. It was going to be a 3-day celebration. and we were both excited since we hadn't seen that side of the family in years. My brother had taken time off from his job at the hospital where he works as a pediatric nurse, and I'd wrapped up a major project at work just in time to make this trip happen. We got to the airport early, checked our bags, and made it through security without any issues. My brother was wearing his traditional clothing because he wanted to be comfortable on the long flight, and honestly, he always wore it when traveling to family events. It was normal for us. We grabbed some coffee, sat at our gate, and waited for boarding to start. When they called our group, we lined up with everyone else. That's when I noticed her. This woman, maybe in her 50s, kept staring at my brother. Not just a glance, but a full-on stare. She was standing near the gate agent's desk, and she kept looking between my brother and the gate agent like she was trying to get someone's attention. We handed our boarding passes to the agent and started walking down the jetway. I heard raised voices behind us but didn't think much of it. Airports are chaotic. But then someone shouted for everyone to stop. The woman had pushed her way past the gate agent and was now standing at the entrance to the jetway, blocking it completely. She yelled that nobody should move and that we couldn't let him on the plane. She was pointing directly at my brother. Everyone in the jetway stopped and turned around. My brother and I exchanged confused looks. I asked what was going on. She told me not to play dumb with her. She said she knew exactly what he was. She told everyone to look at him and what he was wearing. She accused him of obviously being a terrorist. The words hit me like a punch. My brother's face went pale. My brother tried to explain that he didn't know what she thought, but he was just trying to get to our cousin's wedding. She said that was exactly what he would say. She claimed she'd seen the news and knew how this worked. She said that people like us always had some excuse, some cover story. She announced that it wouldn't happen on her watch. She said she wasn't getting on a plane with him, and she was going to make sure none of the other innocent people did either. She turned to address the other passengers who were now gathered behind her. She told everyone to listen to her because she was trying to save their lives. She called my brother dangerous and told people to look at his beard and his clothes. She said he was clearly from the Middle East. She insisted we couldn't let him on the plane. She mentioned she was a mother of 3 and claimed she knew danger when she saw it. Some passengers looked uncomfortable, others looked angry, but not at my brother. They were angry at her. One guy in a business suit spoke up. The passenger told her she needed to calm down. He said she couldn't just accuse people of being terrorists because of how they looked. She insisted she absolutely could when it was her life on the line, along with everyone else's. She asked why nobody else was concerned, and if they were all blind. The gate agent had called for security by this point. I could see them approaching from the terminal. I told her she was being ridiculous. I explained that my brother was a nurse who worked with children. I said he was one of the most gentle people I knew. She claimed that was what we wanted everyone to believe. She said this was textbook terrorism tactics and accused me of probably being in on it too. My brother looked like he wanted to disappear. He'd dealt with discrimination before. We both had, but never like this. Never this public, this aggressive. Security arrived, 2 officers in uniform. One of the security officers told her they needed her to step aside and let the passengers board. She refused and said she wasn't moving until my brother was removed from the flight. She claimed she was exercising her right as a citizen to protect herself and others. The security officer explained that she was blocking the boarding process and causing a disturbance. He said she needed to come with them. She shouted that she wasn't going anywhere. She said they should be arresting my brother, not her. She declared that she was a hero. She grabbed onto the door frame of the jetway entrance like a child throwing a tantrum. The security officers looked at each other inside. The security officer gave her a last warning. He said she needed to come with them voluntarily or they would have to remove her. She yelled that they would have to drag her out of there. Wrong thing to say. The security officers each took one of her arms. She immediately went limp, apparently thinking they'd just give up. They didn't. They started pulling her away from the doorway. She was screaming the entire time. She screamed for help and accused them of police brutality. She kept yelling that they were letting a terrorist on the plane. She told people to film it and that everyone was going to die and it would be their fault. Her shoes were dragging on the ground when they pulled her through the terminal. Other passengers at nearby gates stopped to stare. Some were filming on their phones. She kept screaming about terrorism and how everyone was going to regret this. Her voice got more distant when they dragged her further away, but we could still hear her ranting. The gate agent apologized profusely to my brother and me, then to all the other passengers. She assured everyone that the flight was completely safe and that the woman had been banned from the airline. She offered my brother an upgrade to first class, which he accepted quietly. When we finally boarded the plane, several passengers stopped to apologize to my brother or offer words of support. An older woman patted his arm gently. She told him she was so sorry he had to deal with that and called the woman absolutely out of her mind. The flight attendants were extra kind to us. One of them mentioned that they dealt with that woman before on other flights and she'd always been difficult, but this was apparently her worst incident yet. We took our seats in first class. My brother was quiet for a while, processing everything. My brother asked if I thought she'd been dragged out of the airport by now. I said she was probably banned from flying altogether after that performance. He laughed a little at that. It wasn't much, but it was something. We tried to put it behind us and focus on the wedding ahead. I moved into this tiny apartment about 8 months ago because it was all I could afford near campus. The place is barely 600 square feet with 2 small bedrooms, separated by walls so thin you can hear someone breathing on the other side. My roommate seemed normal when we first met through a housing group online. We talked about rent and utilities, moved our stuff in, and for the first month everything was fine. Then things changed. About 2 months into our lease, she started bringing guys home. I could hear everything through the walls. At first I thought maybe it was just a one-time thing, but it kept happening. Different guys, same situation, same volume that made me want to disappear. I'm not uptight about this stuff, but when you're trying to sleep at midnight on a Tuesday and the wall next to your bed won't stop shaking, it gets old fast. I tried everything to block it out. I bought expensive noise-canceling headphones and blasted music until my ears hurt. I moved my bed to the opposite wall, but it didn't help much. The apartment is so small that sound just bounces everywhere. What made it worse was how she acted like nothing happened. We passed each other in the kitchen the next morning and she'd be all cheerful, asking about my day like she didn't keep me up half the night. I kept thinking I should say something, but I hate confrontation. I practiced what to say in my head over and over, but whenever I saw her, I'd just chicken out and smile. About 3 weeks ago, my friend came over and we were studying for midterms. Right in the middle of reviewing flashcards, it started again. My friend gave me this horrified look and I wanted to crawl under the couch. They asked if that was what they thought it was. I told them, yeah, it happens all the time. They said I needed to talk to her about it. I explained how awkward that would be. They pointed out that sitting there listening was way more awkward. They were right, but I still didn't do anything. I just kept dealing with it in silence, getting more frustrated each time. I started spending more time at the library and coffee shops, anywhere but home. My own apartment became a place I tried to avoid. Then last night everything came to a head. I had 2 friends over and we were hanging out in the living room watching videos on my laptop. Around 9 o'clock, my roommate came home with another guy. I heard her door close and my stomach dropped because I knew what was coming. Within 10 minutes, it started. Loud. Really loud. My friends and I all looked at each other and nobody knew what to say. We tried to keep talking and turned up the laptop volume, but it was useless. The sounds echoed through the whole apartment while we sat there dying inside. One friend whispered about how crazy this was, while the others started giggling nervously. The whole situation felt ridiculous and uncomfortable. We sat there for maybe 15 minutes, and it just kept going. Then one friend started making this stupid barking noise. Really loud, like a dog. I don't know what made them do it, but they just started barking at the wall. My other friend joined in immediately, making weird screeching sounds like a bird. They both turned and looked at me. Something inside me just broke. All the weeks of frustration and sleepless nights and awkward moments came pouring out. I started making these ridiculous howling noises like a wolf. The 3 of us sat there making a complete zoo worth of animal sounds at the top of our lungs. It was completely insane. We sounded like total idiots, but we couldn't stop. We were all laughing and making these stupid noises, and honestly, it felt good to finally do something, even if it was totally immature. The sounds from her room stopped immediately, just dead silence. We all froze and looked at each other, suddenly realizing what we'd done. The apartment was completely quiet except for us trying not to laugh. My friend stared at me with wide eyes, and I felt my face getting hot. One friend asked in disbelief if we really just did that. I said I couldn't believe it either. My other friend agreed that it was insane. We tried to go back to watching videos, but the mood was weird now. My friends left about half an hour later, and I was alone in the apartment with this horrible feeling in my stomach. My roommate's door stayed closed the rest of the night. I couldn't hear anything from her room, not even talking. This morning I got up early to avoid seeing her, but she was already in the kitchen. We made eye contact for half a second and she looked away immediately, grabbed her coffee, and went back to her room without saying anything. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I've been hiding in my room all day, replaying last night in my head and cringing every single time. Part of me feels justified because she's been so inconsiderate for weeks, but another part of me feels like a total jerk for handling it that way. My friends keep texting me laughing about it, but I just feel weird and embarrassed. The apartment is quiet now, which is what I wanted, but somehow it feels worse than before. I still haven't figured out if I should apologize or if she should apologize first, or if we should both just pretend it never happened. I guess we'll see. I've been a private home care nurse for about 6 years now, and I focus on helping kids. I get to work one-on-one with children who need extra support, and I build real relationships with them and their families. Right now, I'm caring for this amazing little girl. She's 7 years old, has cerebral palsy, and doesn't speak. She uses a wheelchair and needs help with pretty much everything, but she has the brightest personality. She communicates through sounds, facial expressions, and this little communication device she is learning to use. Her family treats me like I'm part of them, which makes the job even better. The thing about being a pediatric nurse for kids with special needs is that you spend a lot of time at hospitals, not because anything's wrong necessarily, but because these kids have multiple specialists they need to see regularly. Physical therapists, occupational therapists, neurologists, gastroenterologists. The list goes on. So hospital visits are just part of our routine. Today was one of those marathon appointment days. We had 3 different specialists to see, spread out over about 5 hours. Her mom came with us like she usually does for the big appointment days. I do most of the direct care, but mom likes to be there to talk to the doctors and make decisions. We make a good team. We finished up with the neurologist around noon, and the next appointment wasn't until 2 p.m. The little one had been such a trooper all morning, sitting through examinations and letting doctors poke and prod her. She deserved a break, and honestly, so did we. Her mom suggested we grab some lunch before the next appointment. She said she was starving. I agreed it was a good idea and mentioned the cafeteria would be easiest since we didn't have time to leave the hospital anyway. So we headed down to the cafeteria. It's a pretty typical hospital cafeteria. Nothing fancy, but the food's decent enough. We got our meals, found a table near the windows, and settled in. I helped get the little one positioned comfortably in her wheelchair at the table with us. She'd been so patient all morning, and I could tell she was happy to just relax for a bit. We were eating and chatting about the appointment, discussing what the neurologist had said about adjusting one of her medications. The little one was content, looking around at people, just taking everything in. After a few minutes, she started making her sounds, just soft humming and babbling, the way she does when she's happy or trying to communicate. It wasn't loud at all, just her normal vocalizations. I noticed this woman a few tables away. She was set up with a laptop, papers spread out, coffee cup, the whole mobile office situation. She kept looking over at us with this annoyed expression. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe she was just stressed about whatever she was working on. But then she stood up and walked straight over to our table. She had this tight smile on her face that didn't reach her eyes. She told us to excuse her, then asked if we could please move to a different table. She said the little one was being disruptive. I thought I'd misheard her at first. I looked at her mom, then back at this woman. I asked her what she just said. She repeated herself, calling the little one disruptive again. She said she needed quiet to work. We were literally sitting in a children's hospital cafeteria. There were kids everywhere, babies crying, toddlers running around. The normal sounds of a busy hospital. And this woman was complaining about a little girl softly humming. I opened my mouth to say something, but her mom beat me to it. And let me tell you, this woman is normally the sweetest, most patient person you'll ever meet. But when it comes to her daughter, she doesn't play around. Her mom asked the woman if she knew where she was. She pointed out that this was a children's hospital. She told her that she could clearly see her daughter had special needs and was only expressing herself. She said if the woman didn't like it, there were plenty of places she could move to. She finished by telling her not to make her lack of compassion and understanding their problem. The woman's face went red. She just stood there for a second with her mouth slightly open, like she couldn't believe someone had talked back to her. Then she put her hand on her hip in this dramatic way. She complained that she'd come down to the cafeteria to work on her laptop, and the little one was making it hard for her to concentrate. She said now she had to pack up all her things to move. That's when I'd had enough. I looked at her, then very deliberately pointed to our table. We had the wheelchair, which takes up a decent amount of space. We had the diaper bag with all of the little one's supplies. We had her feeding equipment. We had the communication device. We had medications. We had extra clothes. We had blankets. We had toys to keep her entertained during the long day. Our table looked like we'd moved in. I simply pointed at everything we had while saying the word things in a questioning tone. I didn't say anything else. I just kept pointing at everything we had with us, then looked back at her laptop and single coffee cup. The woman's face went from red to almost purple. She didn't say another word. She just let out this huge, dramatic sigh, spun around and stomped back to her table. She made a big show of slamming her laptop shut, shoving papers into her bag, and grabbing her coffee cup. She sighed loudly about 3 more times while she packed up, clearly hoping we were watching her performance. We weren't. We'd already gone back to eating our lunch. When she walked past our table with her stuff, the little one, completely oblivious to the whole situation, chose that exact moment to let out a happy squeal. The woman walked faster. Her mom and I looked at each other and just started laughing. Not loudly, we didn't want to make more of a scene, but we couldn't help it. Her mom said she couldn't believe some people. I said I couldn't believe it either, especially in a children's hospital of all places. I asked what the woman had expected. Absolute silence. Her mom said if the woman wanted quiet, she should go to a library or stay in her office. We finished our lunch in peace. The little one continued making her happy sounds. And you know what? Nobody else in that entire cafeteria seemed to have a problem with it, because everyone else understood where they were and why they were there. They understood this was a place for children, many of whom had special needs and communicated in different ways. They understood that compassion and patience were requirements in a place like this, not optional qualities. After lunch, we headed up to the next appointment. The little one did great with a physical therapist, and then we had one more stop with a gastroenterologist. By the time we were done for the day, we were all exhausted but relieved to have everything checked off the list. We loaded everything into the car and headed home. The little one fell asleep almost immediately, worn out from the long day. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.